The 14th of July 1944. A narrow corridor near Caen, Normandy. A British Sherman tank crouched behind the shattered remnants of a hedgerow, its turret rotating slowly as shells whistled past. Inside, Private James "Jimmy" Fletcher, the loader, braced himself for the oncoming German advance. Enemy infantry and armored vehicles had been pressing hard, confident that the British line would buckle under pressure. What they did not anticipate was the ferocity of one loader in a single tank. Fletcher worked with deliberate speed. Shells were cradled and rammed into the breach with mechanical precision, each one loaded faster than the enemy could react. The 75mm gun roared with successive volleys, striking Panzer IVs and Stu-GS at critical weak points. In a matter of seconds, a concentrated hail of fire erupted from the tank, catching German forces by surprise. Vehicles stalled, infantry scattered, and the advance faltered. What unfolded in 30 seconds was more than brute force. It was a display of focus, timing, and audacity. Fletcher's rapid loading had turned a vulnerable position into a crucible of destruction. In those moments, German troops faced not just fire, they confronted a shock that would paralyze them, leaving an indelible mark on the battlefield and ensuring the British maintained control of the corridor. The battle for Caen in July 1944 was a contest of attrition, where every hedge, orchard, and ruined building became a battlefield in miniature. British forces had established defensive positions along key corridors to slow the German counterattacks and protect the momentum of the Allied advance. Sherman tanks, integral to these operations, provided both firepower and morale, capable of engaging infantry and armored vehicles alike. Their crews operated in tightly coordinated teams, each role critical. The commander directed, the driver maneuvered, the gunner aimed, and the loader ensured a continuous supply of shells. Private James Fletcher, like every loader in the British armoured units, trained relentlessly to meet the demands of high-intensity combat. The Sherman 75mm gun required careful handling. Shells were heavy, rounds needed to be seated precisely, and timing was crucial. In the chaos of a German assault, a moment's hesitation could allow enemy armour to exploit a vulnerability. Fletcher's role, though often overlooked, was pivotal. A well-fed gun allowed the tank to unleash continuous fire, maintaining pressure and disrupting enemy formations. German forces were seasoned and aggressive. Panzer divisions moved with coordinated tactics, combining armor and mechanized infantry to overwhelm isolated positions. Intelligence had confirmed that German units preferred rapid, concentrated attacks, testing defensive gunners with overlapping assaults. The British tanks, while technologically capable, relied on crew efficiency and discipline to survive these onslaughts. A single lapse in loading speed, communication, or targeting could transform a strong point into a vulnerable target. The corridor near Caen was a narrow choke point. German armored vehicles approached in waves, while infantry prepared to exploit any breach. British forces had dug in, hedgerows and craters providing partial cover. Communication among units was constant but strained. Visual signals, shouted commands, and prearranged firing sectors kept the lines coordinated. The Sherman's turret rotations, the commander's calls, and the loader's rhythm all had to function as one. The effectiveness of the tank, and by extension, the survival of surrounding infantry, depended on the precision and speed of each crew member. Fletcher had already faced previous skirmishes in Normandy, yet each engagement heightened both the physical demand and psychological pressure. The knowledge that the German advance could be slowed or halted by his actions imbued each movement with consequence. Training emphasized rhythm: load, ram, aim, fire, observe. Efficiency could not be sacrificed for caution, yet recklessness could prove fatal. In this environment, the loader's hands were as vital as the gun itself. As German tanks advanced toward the British position, the scenario crystallized into a moment of extreme pressure. The Sherman's crew knew that disruption of the enemy advance depended on rapid, accurate firing. Fletcher's task, seemingly simple but fraught with risk, would determine the tank's contribution to the defensive line. If he maintained speed and accuracy, the corridor could be held. If he faltered, German armor might break through, compromising not just the Sherman but the broader defensive strategy. In these moments, preparation met opportunity. Fletcher's prior drills, combined with acute awareness of the enemy's approach, positioned him to act decisively. The efficiency of British tank crews was forged in training grounds, but the crucible of combat demanded more nerve, timing, and relentless focus. The coming 30 seconds would test every ounce of his skill, turning ordinary loading into an extraordinary act that would shock the German advance and etch itself into the tactical history of the Normandy campaign. The German assault along the corridor intensified as Panzer IVs and Stu-GS advanced, coordinated with infantry squads trained to exploit any gaps. Reconnaissance had indicated the British line was prepared, but the defenders were outnumbered and stretched across multiple hedgerows and damaged roads. The narrowness of the corridor meant that even minor miscalculations could create opportunities for enemy breakthroughs. Every tank, every crew, and every loader became a critical element in maintaining the defensive line. Private Fletcher had watched the German forces approach, noting their formations and timing. The enemy relied on coordinated advances, expecting the British crews to be overwhelmed by speed and firepower. But Fletcher understood the Sherman's potential when operated at maximum efficiency. His role as loader was more than repetitive motion, it was the heartbeat of the tank's firing sequence. A delayed shell could give a panzer the chance to target weak points, compromise the Sherman, and open the corridor to the enemy. Conversely, flawless execution could turn a vulnerable position into a point of resistance, halting or even reversing momentum. The British defensive strategy emphasized concentrated fire and overlapping arcs. Each Sherman was positioned to cover both the tank in front and the adjacent infantry, creating crossfire zones designed to maximize impact. Communication was key. The commander relayed targets, the gunner tracked, and the loader ensured an uninterrupted cycle of shells. Fletcher's hands were central to this system. Each 75mm shell had to be loaded swiftly and correctly, allowing the gunner to maintain a relentless rate of fire that could break the cohesion of the German advance. German troops pressed forward, confident but wary. Previous engagements had shown them the strength of British tank crews, yet they relied on numbers and coordinated tactics to overwhelm isolated units. Fletcher, however, had trained for precisely this intensity. Muscle memory and anticipation allowed him to load with a rhythm that transformed seconds into decisive action. Each shell fired became part of a controlled rhythm, producing what the enemy would later describe as a firestorm in barely half a minute. The corridor itself amplified the effect. German formations were constricted, reducing their ability to maneuver or retreat quickly. The Sherman's placement and the loader's rapid work meant that every round had maximum effect. Hits on engines, tracks, and concentrated infantry disrupted the German advance immediately. Where panic could have spread, the skill of one loader created an instant tactical advantage, giving the British defenders room to regroup and respond. By the time the first wave of shells was expended, the German troops were forced to pause, regroup, and reassess. The efficiency of the Sherman's firing cycle under Fletcher's hands had not only halted their momentum but inflicted both physical and psychological damage. Enemy tanks and infantry were immobilized or scattered, and hesitation spread through their ranks. The corridor, initially a potential breach, had become a defensive strongpoint. The preparation, focus, and precise execution of the British crew, with Fletcher as the pivotal agent, created a scenario where the outcome of the engagement was shaped in mere seconds. The loader's mastery transformed what could have been a precarious defensive position into a decisive disruption of enemy plans. In the minutes that followed, the German advance remained disorganized, providing the British forces with an opportunity to consolidate, counterattack, and exploit the confusion. In those 30 seconds, the principles of British armored doctrine, speed, coordination, and precision, were demonstrated in full. The German troops, confident in their numbers and tactics, encountered the stark reality that a single crew member's skill could impose chaos on a larger force. Fletcher's actions were not isolated flashes of heroism, they were the result of rigorous training, anticipation, and understanding of both his equipment and the tactical situation. The corridor had been defended, the enemy momentarily paralyzed, and the stage was set for a counter-response. Private Fletcher, the loader, had taken a role often overlooked and turned it into a decisive instrument of battlefield control. His 30-second Firestorm would become a defining example of how focus, timing, and mastery could overwhelm an opponent, leaving a lasting impact on both the tactical and psychological dimensions of the Normandy campaign. Private James Fletcher's role as a loader demanded extraordinary precision under extreme pressure. Each 75mm shell weighed over 16 kilograms, requiring both strength and careful handling. Beyond physical effort, every round had to be seated correctly to ensure the gun could fire safely and accurately. A single misalignment could jam the breech, halt fire, or even endanger the entire crew. In the 30-second Firestorm, Fletcher demonstrated an almost mechanical precision. Every shell was rammed, aligned, and fired with exact timing. The coordinated rhythm allowed the gunner to maintain a near-continuous rate of fire, striking critical components of German tanks and disrupting infantry formations. Precision was not merely a technical requirement, it was the fulcrum upon which the defensive success of the Sherman balanced. The effectiveness of Fletcher's work was amplified by understanding target priority. Weak points in enemy armor, exposed flanks, and advancing infantry squads were neutralized first. This methodical application of fire ensured maximum impact in minimal time. The result was a rapid disruption of German cohesion, demonstrating that precision in execution could transform the tactical environment, even when facing superior numbers. The firestorm created by Fletcher was as much an act of courage as it was skill. Enemy forces were advancing in tight formations, tanks firing, and infantry pressing forward. Each shell loaded represented a personal exposure to risk. Miscalculation, mechanical failure, or counterfire could have fatal consequences. Yet Fletcher operated with calm determination, maintaining focus and composure. Courage in this context was sustained under constant threat. The German advance was methodical, relying on overlapping attacks and intimidation. Fletcher's courage allowed him to convert fear into action, turning the loader's station from a simple support role into a decisive instrument of battlefield disruption. The firestorm that emerged in 30 seconds was a direct result of steadfast nerve under immense pressure. The psychological effect on both sides was significant. British crew members drew confidence from Fletcher's decisiveness, while German troops faced confusion and hesitation. Courage, combined with skill and timing, magnified the impact of the loader's work, showing that even in a brief moment, steadfast resolve could alter the outcome of an engagement. A Sherman tank was not just a machine, it was a system of interdependent roles. The loader's rapid performance relied on synchronization with the gunner, commander, and driver. The commander identified targets and directed fire, the gunner aimed with precision, and the driver adjusted positioning to maintain optimal firing angles. Fletcher's speed and accuracy were inseparable from this network of coordination. The 30-second firestorm demonstrated the power of disciplined teamwork. Fletcher maintained rhythm while the gunner aligned the turret, the commander tracked incoming threats, and the driver adjusted angles to maximize line of sight and impact. Each member's contribution amplified the others, and Fletcher's loader station became the heartbeat of the operation. Through coordination, what could have been a single tank under siege became a force multiplier. The enemy advance was halted, tanks and infantry disrupted, and the corridor remained under British control. Fletcher's ability to integrate skill into a larger system exemplified how precise human action, synchronized within a trained unit, could dominate the battlefield. The immediate effect of Fletcher's 30-second firestorm was tangible. German armor halted, infantry fell back, and the momentum of the assault dissipated. Each round fired had a calculated effect, disabling engines, destroying tracks, and scattering troops. The disruption extended beyond the physical damage. The German advance, trained to rely on speed and coordination, was fractured in an instant. The psychological impact was equally significant. German soldiers, confident in their numerical and technological advantage, confronted a sudden, overwhelming force from an unexpected source, a single loader's speed and precision. Hesitation replaced aggression, and previously coordinated formations became disordered. Fletcher's actions demonstrated that decisive, concentrated skill could dictate the tempo of combat and impose control over superior forces. Beyond the immediate battle, the impact carried operational weight. The corridor remained defensible, British infantry retained their positions, and follow-up armor could maneuver without immediate enemy pressure. The 30-second Firestorm proved that tactical initiative, even when executed by a single crew member, could shape the broader outcome of an engagement. German tactics relied on exploiting weaknesses in British tank crews, isolated positions, slow loaders, and predictable firing patterns. Fletcher's rapid adaptation to the approach of multiple Panzer IVs and Stu-GS neutralized these advantages. He adjusted loading rhythm, prioritized targets, and synchronized with the turret and gunner in real time. This adaptive skill was not improvisation, it was the product of rigorous training combined with acute situational awareness. Fletcher anticipated enemy movements, countered attempts to overwhelm the Sherman, and responded instantaneously to threats from different angles. His ability to adapt under extreme pressure ensured the Firestorm was effective, continuous, and decisive. By adapting to evolving threats, Fletcher disrupted the enemy's assumptions about vulnerability. German units that expected to penetrate the corridor found themselves immobilized, reassessing their tactics in the face of a single loader's rapid execution. Adaptation, in this case, magnified the effectiveness of both technology and teamwork. The 30-second Firestorm became a defining example of British tank crew efficiency in Normandy. Reports later emphasized that the action, though brief, had strategic and psychological consequences. Fletcher's performance demonstrated that the loader's role, often underestimated, could directly shape the outcome of critical engagements. The legacy of such moments extends beyond a single battle. British armored doctrine recognized that skill, focus, and coordination could overcome numerical superiority. Fletcher's Firestorm would serve as a teaching point in training programs, illustrating how speed, precision, and decisive action could paralyze enemy forces in seconds. It was a reminder that in war, individual mastery within a disciplined system could leave lasting effects on tactics, morale, and battlefield outcomes. The German advance approached with relentless determination. Panzer IVs and Stu-GS moved in tight formations, engines roaring, their tracks tearing through hedgerows and rubble. Infantry followed closely, rifles and machine guns ready to exploit any breach. Inside the Sherman, every crew member was alert, but the moment of reckoning fell squarely on Private James Fletcher. Fletcher braced himself, arms tensed as he grabbed the next shell. The 75mm round felt heavier under stress, yet muscle memory guided his hands. He rammed it into the breach with precision, ensuring the gunner could fire instantly. Outside, the lead Panzer IV rolled forward, expecting little resistance beyond defensive fire. What it encountered instead was a concentrated torrent, unleashed with split-second timing. The first round struck the German tank's flank. Tracks shredded, engine compartment hit, and the vehicle shuddered to a halt. Smoke and flame rose, causing the crew to scramble. The following shell tore through another panzer, knocking out its turret and forcing infantry to scatter. Each successive round followed the same disciplined rhythm: load, seat, fire, delivering devastating effects in rapid succession. The Sherman shuddered with each discharge, but Fletcher's rhythm never wavered. His concentration transformed mechanical repetition into lethal artistry. Every shell was aimed to disable, disrupt, and delay. German commanders watching the corridor realized their formations were no longer advancing but splintering under an unanticipated assault. The chaos among the enemy was immediate. Tanks stalled, engines smoking, infantry hesitated, exposed to both the Sherman's fire and the supporting British positions. Fletcher's 30-second onslaught had disrupted cohesion, forcing German units to adapt under extreme pressure. Timing was critical. Any pause could allow the panzer formation to regroup, but Fletcher maintained speed, ensuring that each target was neutralized before it could threaten the Sherman or its supporting infantry. Inside the Sherman, the crew moved in silent coordination. The gunner aligned the turret on each target, the commander tracked enemy movement, and the driver adjusted positioning to maintain firing angles. Fletcher's loading synchronized perfectly with their actions. The result was a continuous, overwhelming wave of fire that German troops could neither predict nor withstand. By the midpoint of the engagement, German armor had lost momentum. Panzer IVs and Stu-GS attempted evasive maneuvers, but the corridor's narrowness prevented effective retreat. Infantry were pinned down, unable to advance, retreat, or coordinate attacks efficiently. Fletcher's concentrated firestorm had transformed a vulnerable defensive position into an impenetrable bulwark. Each shell amplified the psychological pressure on the German troops. They had trained for numerical advantage and coordinated assault, yet a single loader's precision created hesitation and confusion. Fear spread among the ranks as vehicles stalled and comrades fell, leaving officers to improvise under duress. Fletcher's focus and speed had reshaped the battlefield within 30 seconds, converting imminent danger into tactical control. As the Sherman's 30-second firestorm concluded, the enemy's momentum was broken. German formations were disordered, armor immobilized, and infantry scattered. British positions in the corridor remained secure, their advance uninterrupted. Fletcher, breathing heavily but unshaken, had executed an act of precise skill and courage that would become emblematic of individual impact in mechanized warfare. The effectiveness of the Sherman in this engagement was not simply in its firepower but in the loader's mastery. Fletcher's rapid, accurate, and unrelenting work had created a cascade of disruption that neutralized superior numbers, demonstrating how training, focus, and nerve could dictate the outcome of a critical encounter. The German troops, momentarily stunned, attempted to regroup. Tanks that had advanced confidently now staggered under the unexpected intensity of the Sherman's concentrated fire. Private Fletcher, still in the loader's station, maintained the rhythm that had dictated the first wave. Shell after shell found its mark, targeting engines, turrets, and tracks, disabling Panzer IVs and Stu-GS in rapid succession. A Panzer IV, attempting to outflank the Sherman, accelerated along the narrow corridor. Fletcher anticipated the movement, timing the shell to strike the rear armor just as the vehicle passed. The impact threw the tank off balance, immobilizing it and forcing accompanying infantry to halt. Another Stu-G tried to advance from the opposite side. Fletcher's next round ripped through its armor, sending smoke and fire billowing. In mere seconds, the corridor had become a crucible of destruction. Inside the Sherman, coordination was seamless. The commander tracked the remaining enemy units, directing the gunner while Fletcher loaded continuously. The driver adjusted the tank's position to maximize arcs of fire, creating overlapping fields that no single German vehicle could penetrate. Each shell amplified the previous one's effect, creating a domino of destruction and disruption. The psychological effect on German troops was profound. Soldiers hesitated, unsure which tank or shell would strike next. Confidence shattered, formations faltered, and officers struggled to maintain cohesion. What had been a coordinated, rapid advance devolved into confusion. Fletcher's speed and precision had created a temporary but decisive paralysis across multiple enemy units. Even as additional German tanks attempted to enter the corridor, the momentum had shifted irreversibly. Fletcher's 30-second firestorm had broken the rhythm of the attack, turning fear into delay and chaos into opportunity for the British forces. Every shell fired not only neutralized immediate threats but also amplified the defensive advantage of the entire corridor. By the time the firing sequence concluded, German troops were forced into a defensive posture. The corridor, previously contested, now remained under British control. Infantry and armor alike had been halted, unable to coordinate further action. Fletcher, exhausted but focused, had executed a flawless sequence that combined speed, skill, and courage, leaving a lasting impact on the tactical and psychological landscape of the battlefield. The Firestorm demonstrated the power of a single crew member within a mechanized system. Fletcher's mastery of the loader's role transformed what could have been vulnerability into absolute control. German troops, having anticipated an easy advance, were now disoriented and diminished in morale. British forces gained both strategic and psychological advantage, securing the corridor for follow-up operations and maintaining the integrity of their defensive line. The effectiveness of the action lay not only in the shells fired but in the timing, rhythm, and anticipation that Fletcher maintained. Each round disrupted the enemy's cohesion, altered their tactical decisions, and preserved the Sherman and its supporting infantry. In those 30 seconds, one loader had reshaped the battlefield, demonstrating that individual skill, when applied with precision and focus, could dictate the outcome of a critical engagement. The corridor remained in British hands, the German advance paralyzed, and the mission's objectives intact. Fletcher's 30-second Firestorm became an enduring example of how discipline, courage, and mastery of equipment could overwhelm superior forces, leaving a mark on both the tactical record and the memory of those who survived to recount it. The corridor remained under British control, but the impact of Private Fletcher's 30-second Firestorm extended far beyond survival. German Panzer IVs and Stugius lay disabled or retreating, and infantry formations had lost cohesion. The immediate tactical advantage was clear: the enemy advance was halted, momentum broken, and the British defensive line remained intact. Fletcher's role, though often overlooked in conventional accounts, had been decisive in shaping the outcome. Within the Sherman, the crew performed post-engagement checks. Ammunition stocks were counted, turret mechanisms inspected, and minor adjustments made to ensure continued readiness. Every crew member understood the significance of the loader's rapid execution, the survival of the tank, the security of the corridor, and the preservation of operational momentum had depended on his skill. The synergy of crew coordination had allowed the tank to operate at peak effectiveness under extreme pressure. German forces were forced to reassess. Reports from commanders indicated that multiple tanks had been immobilized, and infantry were disoriented and delayed. Confidence in rapid assaults had faltered, hesitation replaced aggression. The Firestorm, executed in half a minute, had immediate psychological and material consequences, demonstrating that a single, highly trained loader could impose decisive disruption on a larger force. Strategically, the British held a critical position. The corridor's defense ensured that follow-up armored units and infantry could maneuver unimpeded, maintaining the momentum of the Allied advance in Normandy. The 30-second engagement allowed commanders to exploit enemy disorganization, launching counterattacks and consolidating positions with minimal risk. Fletcher's action had not only prevented a breakthrough but had created an opportunity for further tactical advantage. The crew's morale was elevated. Witnessing the effect of one loader's precision under fire reinforced confidence in training, coordination, and the Sherman's capabilities. The 30-second Firestorm became a clear example of how human skill could magnify mechanical power, turning the perceived vulnerability of a single tank into a decisive defensive tool. Documentation of the event emphasized the combination of speed, precision, and courage. Military analysts later noted that the loader's role was crucial to the Sherman's effectiveness, particularly in high-pressure engagements. Fletcher's rapid execution transformed theory into practice, demonstrating that disciplined, coordinated action could dictate the outcome even against numerically superior forces. The immediate consequences on the German side were tangible. Panzer divisions, expecting swift breakthroughs, encountered resistance that disrupted planning and execution. Infantry were forced to halt or retreat, vehicles immobilized, and coordinated attack sequences collapsed. The psychological impact of the Firestorm reverberated through the ranks, creating a momentary paralysis that allowed the British to consolidate control over the corridor and secure the area for subsequent operations. Private Fletcher's skill had reshaped the battlefield in 30 seconds. His mastery of the loader's role, combined with coordination with the gunner, commander, and driver, had delivered a defensive victory that far exceeded the expectations of any single crew. The corridor remained British, the enemy stalled, and the momentum of the Allied advance preserved. This engagement exemplified the profound effect individual expertise could have in the broader operational context of mechanized warfare. The disruption caused by Fletcher's 30-second firestorm extended beyond immediate tactical gains. German units, shaken by the sudden loss of cohesion, were forced to re-evaluate their advance along the corridor. Commanders issued new orders to regroup, but the momentum had already shifted. Where previously confidence had driven the panzer divisions forward, hesitation and uncertainty now prevailed. The British forces, in contrast, capitalized on the disruption, consolidating positions and preparing for follow-up operations with minimal risk. Within the Sherman, the crew remained vigilant. Fletcher continued to load shells, ensuring readiness for any residual threats. The gunner and commander coordinated closely, scanning for enemy regrouping attempts. The driver adjusted position slightly to maintain optimal arcs of fire. The seamless integration of crew roles highlighted the interdependence of training, skill, and rapid decision-making. Fletcher's role, central to this synergy, had converted a moment of extreme danger into a platform of control. The German response was slowed and fragmented. Immobilized tanks blocked portions of the corridor, forcing infantry to navigate around disabled vehicles under potential fire. Morale among enemy troops declined sharply. Hesitation replaced aggression as soldiers witnessed the rapid effectiveness of the British defense. Reports from the field later confirmed that the 30-second firestorm had paralyzed several units, delaying attacks for hours and creating openings that British forces exploited to strengthen the corridor's security. Strategically, Fletcher's action had lasting implications. The corridor remained a secure route for Allied movement, facilitating subsequent armor and infantry operations. By neutralizing enemy momentum, the loader's rapid execution ensured that British forces maintained the initiative. The 30-second firestorm became more than a defensive success. It represented a decisive moment where skill, speed, and coordination transformed a potentially vulnerable position into a linchpin of operational advantage. The psychological dimension of the engagement cannot be overstated. German troops confronted the stark reality that a single crew member could shape the battlefield with speed, precision, and focus. Confidence in previously reliable tactics faltered, and officers were forced to improvise under duress. For the British crew, witnessing the effect of Fletcher's mastery reinforced the importance of individual skill within the context of disciplined teamwork. The loader's role, often overshadowed in historical accounts, proved pivotal in both tactical and operational outcomes. Fletcher's performance was subsequently noted in after-action reports as exemplary. Analysts highlighted that the synchronization of loader, gunner, commander, and driver allowed one tank to influence the course of an entire engagement. The 30-second firestorm not only disrupted German formations but also provided a template for how disciplined execution in critical moments could yield disproportionate results. By the time the corridor was fully secured, German units remained disorganized and delayed. British armor and infantry exploited the advantage, consolidating defensive positions and preparing for further advances. Fletcher's 30-second firestorm had shifted the tactical balance, demonstrating that mastery of a single role within a mechanized system could determine the outcome of a critical engagement. The corridor's security, the disruption of enemy momentum, and the preservation of operational initiative were all direct results of one loader's skill, courage, and relentless focus. The 30-second firestorm over the corridor near Caen stands as a testament to the profound impact of individual skill in mechanized warfare. Private James Fletcher, a loader in a Sherman tank, transformed what could have been a vulnerable defensive position into a decisive advantage. His rapid, precise loading under extreme pressure allowed the tank to unleash continuous, targeted fire that disrupted German formations, immobilized armor, and scattered infantry. In moments, he had reshaped the battlefield. Fletcher's actions illustrate that technology alone does not determine the outcome of combat. The Sherman's 75mm gun provided potential, but it was human expertise that converted mechanical capability into tactical dominance. Every shell loaded and fired with precision was a calculated act, reflecting training, anticipation, and calm under pressure. His mastery of the loader's role ensured that speed, accuracy, and timing aligned to produce effects far beyond the scope of a single crew member. The psychological dimension of the engagement was equally significant. German troops, expecting a straightforward advance, faced unexpected disruption that paralyzed their momentum. Confidence turned into hesitation, and organized assault fractured under the pressure of a skillfully executed firestorm. The action demonstrated that courage, focus, and discipline could impose control over a superior enemy, leaving a lasting impression on both sides of the battlefield. Strategically, the corridor remained under British control, enabling follow-up armored and infantry operations. The operation highlighted the multiplier effect of disciplined crew coordination, where the loader, gunner, commander, and driver functioned as a unified system. Fletcher's 30-second intervention not only secured immediate tactical success but also exemplified principles of mechanized warfare, preparation, synchronization, and decisive action. Ultimately, the story of Fletcher and the Sherman is a reminder that in war, individual mastery within a disciplined team can determine outcomes that ripple beyond a single engagement. The 30-second firestorm remains a defining example of how skill, courage, and timing can turn vulnerability into victory, altering both the tactical and psychological landscape. One loader, operating with precision and resolve, proved that even the briefest actions could have enduring consequences for the course of battle and the history of armored warfare.